kids? Welcome back to another episode of Hawk After Dark. If you are seeing this episode, that means that you are a top tier subscriber to our Patreon page. And so I want to take a moment and say an absolutely massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed at that level and who is watching this podcast. You guys are fucking rock stars. I mean that 100%. Got my Full Potato Friday mug, even though this is an episode of Hawk After Dark. All right, so what are we going to talk about tonight? Because, you know, it's dark outside and I'm Hawk and it's after dark. And so it's Hawk After Dark. We are going to talk, it's almost an oldie but a goodie at this point. We're going to talk about Little Kenny Cheesebro. Who remembers Little Kenny Cheesebro? Let me see the show of hands, okay? Little Kenny Cheesebro, also known as Kenneth Chesebro, although to me, and I'm sure to you, forever in our hearts, he's going to be Little Kenny Cheesebro of the Cheese and Kraken fame. Kenneth Chesebro is one of Donald Trump's attorneys between, you know, like kind of leading up to the election in 2020, but definitely between election night 2020 and January 6th. And Kenneth Chesebro is a Harvard educated lawyer. He went to Harvard Law School. Which it's like how somebody can accomplish the things that you need to accomplish in your life and have the intellect and the academic achievements and skills necessary in order for you to get into Harvard Law School. And then 25 years later, you find yourself working for Donald Trump, trying to overturn a free and fair election for president of the United States. I hope this guy writes a book, man, and unpacks all of that shit, because I would buy that book. I would read that book in a freaking heartbeat. I mean, Donald Trump's life is an absolute wasteland of incredibly gifted, talented, highly educated attorneys who one day were just like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll throw that out the window. Who gives a shit? I'm going to work for this dickhead. And their careers are gone. Their reputations are gone. Everything in their life is in tatters. But then on the other hand, it's like, you know, he also has lawyers like Alina Habba, who's just full potato. And since this is the, you know, I like to think of Hawk After Dark as kind of an exclusive group. You know, because it's like you guys have subscribed at the top level, $15 a month, and that means more to me than I could possibly express to all of you guys, and it means a tremendous amount to my brother Falcon as well. But so it's like I consider the Hawk After Dark folks to be, you know, I feel like we're kind of a club. It's a tight-knit group. And I'm going to share one thing with you guys at the beginning of this podcast. I'm making an effort to dial back on the smoking of the cigarettes, and a little bit of a pacifier in that process. It is my jewel. All right, I won't do that again. But it's something that I'm working on. I'm only going to share that with you guys, because like this is the real group. The Hawk After Dark crowd is like you guys are the real deal. Okay. So we're going to talk about Kenneth Chesebro, Little Kenny Cheesebro tonight. And a lot of people, well, I've been in a trial for 5 weeks, so I almost said strike that. Because I wanted to rephrase it. Strike that, and then you start over. People frequently ask me, what news sites do I go to, like on a daily basis? A news site that I have gone to multiple times per day for the last 20 years, at least the last 20 years, is a website called talkingpointsmemo.com. It's out of Manhattan. It's run by a guy named Josh Marshall. And that website, it's one of my most trusted. It's one of my go-to websites. I check it 5 or 6 times a day, at least 7 days a week. They do absolutely incredible work. Talkingpointsmemo.com. They, through intrepid reporting, they've got a reporter who works for them, a guy named Josh Kovensky, who's just a badass of a reporter. He is just a badass. And somehow he got a document dump from Little Kenny Cheesebro. It was a document dump that he had provided to the Attorney General's office for the state of Michigan, because he's trying not to get criminally charged again. So let's back up and talk about Kenneth Chesebro, who he is, how we got here, where he's at right now legally, and then we'll unpack this stuff. So Kenneth Chesebro is, he's an attorney. I think he's out of Wisconsin at this point. And he found himself in Trump world, and we'll unpack a little bit of this in a minute here. He is the guy who is basically responsible for the fake electors scheme. He is the one who came up with the legal framework to have alternate slates of electors. When I say electors, I mean within the context of the Electoral College. And so I kind of look at, January 6th and Trump's efforts to overturn the election and the crazy bullshit conspiracy stuff. I kind of look at that. I look at the whole thing in those 3 components. January 6th was the inbred, mouth-breathing Gomer MAGA chud rubes who just believed everything that Donald Trump said, and showed up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th and stormed the Capitol. And between the whole crowd there, they had one full set of teeth. So, they had that going for them, which is nice. Then we had the bullshit conspiracy theory wing of what was going on. And that was Rudy Giuliani, Sidney the Kraken Powell, Jenna Ellis, and kind of Jeffrey Clark in the DOJ. And so there was that wing where they're like, Italian satellites were changing votes, and Dominion voting machines and Smartmatic voting machines, and Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss and secret suitcases full of ballots and ballot stuffing, the batshit crazy conspiracy stuff. So we've got the mouth breathers who stormed the Capitol and smeared their own fecal matter on the wall. Then we've got Rudy Giuliani and Sidney the Kraken Powell with their gibberish. But then we had these other guys over here. And it was mainly Little Kenny Cheesebro and John Eastman, who came up with 2 or 3 separate things, but were trying to work within the law in a respectable, non-crazy, non-violent manner to keep Fat Nixon, Little Donnie Two Scoops, Comb Over Caligula, Tangerine Tits, Mango Mussolini in power, even though he had lost the 2020 election. They were trying to go about this process in respectable means within the law, with your suit and tie and your vest, and bring some kind of credibility to this process. And so Kenneth Chesebro comes up with the fake elector scheme. And so that's how he kind of worms his way into Trump world. And he starts working with John Eastman, and John Eastman, and then Ken Chesebro comes in with the second part, which is Mike Pence can choose to just not open and not count the electoral votes from the disputed states. And so Kenneth Chesebro comes up with this alternate slate of electors idea. And it's interesting. So think back to 2016. What were the swing states that put Donald Trump over the top in 2016 and gave him the win? Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin. What swing states did Joe Biden win that gave him an electoral college win in 2020? Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona. Same 5 states. So when Little Kenny Cheesebro comes up with this idea, this legal theorizing of alternate slates of electors, and he's working with John Eastman, they're both coordinating with Boris Epshteyn. If you want to go down a fucking rabbit hole, Google Boris Epshteyn, last name spelled Epshteyn. I think that's right. All of the lawyers who work through Trump get to Trump through Boris Epshteyn. He's the gatekeeper. Yeah. So Little Kenny Cheesebro working with John Eastman, who's getting disbarred, coordinating through Boris Epshteyn and Trump, decide that they're going to put forward alternate slates of electors in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, but they also added Nevada and New Mexico. Nevada goes back and forth every now and then. Okay, I can see that. New Mexico is a blue state. I never understood why they added New Mexico to that list. Who knows? I don't know. So anyway, Josh Kovensky. So, sorry, I was jumping ahead. Little more background. Little Kenny Cheesebro found himself indicted on several felony counts on August 4th, 2023, out of Fulton County, Georgia, as a part of Fonnie Willis's RICO case, Donald Trump and 18 co-defendants. 2 months and 2 or 3 weeks later, Little Kenny Cheesebro reached a plea deal, and he pled guilty to a felony in Fulton County, Georgia. Quite the turn of events. And so, and he agreed to cooperate with Fani Willis. Previous to that, think back to when Donald Trump was indicted by Jack Smith in Washington, D.C. for January 6th and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Donald Trump was the only person actually indicted in that case on 4 felony counts. But there were 6 unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators. Little Kenny Cheesebro is one of them. Rudy Giuliani is one of them. Sidney the Kraken Powell is one of them. Jenna Ellis is one of them. And Boris Epstein is one of them as well. They are unindicted co-conspirators in Jack Smith's Washington, D.C. January 6th case. They can be indicted at any moment because he has the evidence, but he has not indicted them yet. So, this fake elector plot that Little Kenny Cheesebro came up with, as I said, involves slates of alternate fake electors in 7 states. Well, it turns out that in most of those 7 states, the state attorney generals, I said that wrong. The state attorneys general, because the plural of attorney general is not attorney generals. The plural of attorney general is attorneys general. It's like, the plural of court martial is not court martials, it's courts martial. And people wonder why immigrants have a hard time learning the English language. So Little Kenny Cheesebro, being an unindicted co-conspirator in Washington, D.C., and being an indicted co-conspirator in Fulton County, Georgia, and then pleading guilty to a felony and agreeing to cooperate, is now like, oh shit, all these 7 other states are investigating this and they're going to charge people too. He's now cooperating with the state attorneys general in at least 5 or 6 of these 7 other states, one of which is Michigan. Which, here's one of my favorite things about Michigan. In the last election, their Secretary of State, their governor, their attorney general, their lieutenant governor that they elected, all women. All women. Their attorney general is a woman named Dana Nessel, who is she is an absolute badass. Absolute badass. And so now Little Kenny Cheesebro, in an effort to head off more felony indictments in 7 states, is cooperating with as many people as he can. He's turning over as many documents as he's got. He sat down for an interview with the Attorney General for the state of Michigan for 4.5 hours. Told her everything. And then gave her documents. And then somehow Josh Kavinsky, the badass who works for Talking Points Memo, got a copy of most of those documents. And he wrote a series of articles about what these lawyers were actually planning to do. And it's information that we haven't gotten before as clearly as it's presented here. It's fucking crazy, man. So all right, so let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to Election Day of 2020, and Donald Trump is like, he comes out to the podium at 2:30 in the morning, and he's like, frankly, we did win this. We were on our way to win this election, and frankly, we did win this election. We won this election. When that was not true. And that was because he experienced his malignant narcissism and sociopathy, experienced such an unimaginable psychic injury, having lost an election to Joe Biden, who campaigned from a fucking basement during COVID. And meanwhile, Donald Trump's holding rallies with 20,000 people and killing God knows how many with COVID. His ego, his psyche, his narcissism, his sociopathy couldn't handle the fact that he lost to Joe Biden. So he came out on election night and said, fuck you, I won. And his supporters were like, yeah, he won. And we were off to the races. And oh, God. And so he finds his way to Little Kenny Cheesebro, who is an appellate lawyer, Harvard educated, and wants to bring legal theories to this. Not Dominion voting machines, not Smartmatic voting machines, not Italian satellites, not True the Vote, not 2,000 Mules, not Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. You know, Little Kenny Cheesebro wants to bring the law to this and find a framework within the law so that Donald Trump can maintain power and remain in office, even though he lost a free and fair election. And, you know, so he comes up basically with three things. He comes up with the fake electors, and he coordinates the fake electors over those 7 states: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico. Again, I don't know why New Mexico. I've never understood that. Fake electors, number one. Number two, Little Kenny Cheesebro and John Eastman working together kind of come up with this thing of, well, Mike Pence could just refuse, because Mike Pence was vice president. The vice president is the president of the Senate. The Senate, the vice president opens the electoral votes, counts them, certifies them. And they're like, well, Mike Pence could just refuse to open and count the electoral votes from these 7 states. Well, what was the next part of that they were thinking about? They wanted to take January 6th and make it last until January 20th, 14 days. They wanted just chaos and mayhem and objections and debate. They wanted Mike Pence to not count electoral votes from those 7 states, or say that they were disputed from those 7 states, or members of the House and the Senate to object to electoral votes from those 7 states, and then have an endless debate over those. But what was standing in their way? The Electoral Count Act, which puts timelines, time limits on the amount of time that you can spend debating disputed electoral votes. Well, how do you get around the Electoral Count Act? You go to the Supreme Court. And that was part 3. That was their third idea. That was Kenny Cheesebro's third idea. Fake electors, Mike Pence and Congress drag it out, or then we throw it to the Supreme Court. And they go through this entire process of, well, which members of the Supreme Court would be with us? Which ones would be against us? And would the Supreme Court, like they did in Bush v. Gore, just step in for the good of the nation and make Donald Trump president? Would they just anoint him as president? Would they crown him as president? And so we're going to unpack some of this stuff based on the documents that Little Kenny Cheesebro gave to the Attorney General for the state of Michigan. And then somehow Josh Kovensky from Talking Points Memo got, I don't think he got all of them, but he got a lot of them, a lot of those documents from the state of Michigan. But the first thing that they wanted to do was because January 6th that's the date. That's the date. That is the date in the Constitution that Congress opens, counts, and certifies the Electoral College votes and the count of the Electoral College votes. And Kenny Chesebro and John Eastman wanted to take January 6th and make it last 14 days until January 20th. Because if it's not resolved by then the Senate can step in and just appoint Mike Pence as temporary president, and then they can go to the Supreme Court. They wanted to take January 6th, and we all saw what happened on January 6th, and they wanted to make it last for 2 fucking weeks. Yeah. I hate these people. I hate these people. I hate these people so much. Because Kenneth Chesebro has said in interviews since then, he's just like, I like to do, legal theory and ideas and coming up with new things within the law and being creative and doing research and, formulating, new possibilities within the law. So to him, to Kenneth Chesebro, dismantling democracy in the United States in January of 2020 was the equivalent of putting together a fucking jigsaw puzzle. Or doing one of those number puzzles, Sudoku or Wordle. It was Wordle. Because he went to Harvard and he's wealthy, and he's white and he's in his 50s. So what does he care? What does he give a shit? No matter what happens or how it lands, he's going to be fine. He's a straight white Christian lawyer who went to Harvard and has a lot of money. He's going to be fine. He does not give a damn about anybody else because this project was interesting to him. It was intellectually stimulating to him. And that's all he cared about. They wanted 2 weeks of chaos. They wanted 2 weeks of chaos. They were intentionally on purpose setting up an unnecessary constitutional crisis because Kenneth Chesebro thought it would be fun and professionally rewarding in some way. These people make me angry. They make me so angry. They just make me angry. Yeah, the plan would have seen the Trump campaign pushing Republican lawmakers to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's win, not just on January 6th, but for 14 days afterward. GOP legislators would have feigned confusion over competing slates of electors. Oh God, is it that slate or is it that slate? Is it that one? Paralyzing Congress as the Trump campaign brought increasing pressure on the Supreme Court to step in and resolve the election in their favor. To do this, Little Kenny Cheesebro formulated various ways to invalidate the Electoral Count Act. Cheesebro wondered at one point whether, quote, legal giants like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee would back their effort. Legal giants like Fat Wolverine. By discarding the Electoral Count Act, Trump campaign lawyers suggested, Republicans in Congress could halt the certification and bring forth endless claims of election fraud in swing states, the 7 states I listed earlier. A process that, according to the documents, Chesebro hoped would create a spectacle, revealing the GOP-friendly Supreme Court as the only rational, functioning actor left standing. And Kenny Chesebro wanted the campaign to bring those challenges to the Electoral Count Act in the state of Georgia. Why did he want the campaign to bring their legal challenges in the state of Georgia in federal court? Because the state of Georgia is in the 11th Circuit. And which Supreme Court justice is responsible for overseeing the 11th Circuit? You know the answer. I know you know the answer. If you're watching this podcast, you're smarter than like 78% of the people out there. I know you know the answer. Which Supreme Court justice oversees the 11th Circuit? I will give you a hint. His wife is an insurrectionist. That's right, Clarence Thomas. You got it. You got it. You guys got it. I could hear over the interwebs. You guys got it. That's right. Clarence Thomas oversees the 11th Circuit. Georgia is in the 11th Circuit. And Little Kenny Cheesebro is like, hey, man, if we file our federal election claims and we try to undo the Electoral Count Act in Georgia in the 11th Circuit, the Supreme Court justice who would have first look at that is Clarence Thomas. That's right. And how do you get Clarence Thomas to decide something in your favor? That's right. You buy him a fucking motorhome. Hey, Clarence. Dude, look at this RV, man. How sweet is that, man? Do you want this RV? Clarence. Do you want this RV? Clarence. Look at me. Clarence, look at me. Do you want that RV? That's how easy it is with Clarence Thomas. Overturn democracy for the cost of an RV. Amazing. So they wanted the point of dragging January 6th out for 14 days was delay, because delay equals confusion. Flood the zone with shit, to quote Steve Bannon. Flood the zone with shit. Only this time it's law-related shit. And, you know, it's like Mike Pence could decline to open the Biden electoral votes. They wanted Chuck Grassley, the 99-year-old senator from Iowa, to file a challenge against the Electoral Count Act with the Supreme Court in December of 2021. Excuse me. They wanted, I don't know, Fat Wolverine, Ted Cruz, and Josh Hawley, and Tom Cotton, and who else to filibuster in the Senate until the Supreme Court was forced to come in and do something. The point of the delay and the fraud discussions was not just to draw attention to Trump's campaign's voter fraud claims, but also to make clear to the Supreme Court that Congress will be unable to act unless either the court or the state legislatures address these claims. And in other emails, Little Kenny Cheesebro, so he and John Eastman and Boris Epshteyn are kind of going back and forth with each other, you know, talking about, well, which Supreme Court justices would be on our side? And they were worried about Chief Justice John Roberts. They knew they had Clarence Thomas in their pocket. All they had to do was buy him a fucking camper. And they knew they had Sam Alito in their pocket because in overturning election, he cited witchcraft laws from 500 years ago. They're like, yeah, that fucking guy's on our side. And, you know, they're pretty sure they had Amy Coney Barrett, but they weren't quite sure. And Kavanaugh, who knows about Kavanaugh, man? And then Neil Gorsuch, it's like, what's he going to do? I don't know. All he cares about is the EPA, because the EPA was mean to his mom under Ronald Reagan when Ronald Reagan appointed his mom as interim director of the EPA. And then she did a whole bunch of dumb fuckery at the EPA until the DOJ showed up and they were like, hey, we're going to prosecute you unless you resign. And so she resigned. And to this day, Neil Gorsuch is like, I hate the EPA. Neil Gorsuch only cares about the EPA the way that Donald Trump only gives a shit about the DOJ if he gets reelected. He just wants control over the DOJ. That's it. He doesn't care about the Department of Education and the Department of Energy. He just wants his hands on the DOJ. Neil Gorsuch is like that with the EPA. Well, if you try to take an Electoral Count Act argument to Neil Gorsuch, I mean, you would have to couch it in terms of, you know, horned owls or something in the EPA or who the hell knows? River pollution in West Virginia. So it's like they're trying to figure out which Supreme Court justices would be on our side, and can we get to 5? Can we get to 5? Because Bush versus Gore was a 5-4 decision. Back in 2000, it was a 5-4 decision. Can we get to a 5-4 decision on this bullshit? Is what Little Kenny Cheesebro and John Eastman and Boris Epshteyn are gaming out in this process. While they are working on their slates of fake electors in the 7 states, while they are working on Republican senators, Republican members of the House, and I mean, who's easier to manipulate than Republican members of the House? It's going to take them 4 days to convince Marjorie Taylor Greene. Really? It'll take him 8 minutes and a Pop-Tart. You know, so, but they've started running into some hiccups. They started running into some hiccups. In the first week of December, Little Kenny Cheesebro, he's all hopped up on his theory of Mike Pence can do this by himself. And he's working with John Eastman, and John Eastman's in the Oval Office, and Boris Epstein's in the Oval Office, and Kenny Cheesebro's hanging out, working through those two. And they're like, we gotta get Mike Pence on board. So Little Kenny Cheesebro calls Mike Pence's attorney. He calls Mike Pence's attorney and he's like, dude, you're not going to believe this. I have the most amazing idea. And of course, Mike Pence's attorney is like, did you bump your head? Have you lost your mind? Are you insane? What do you, no. Mike Pence is not going to do that on January 6th. Have you lost your mind? The Constitution provides absolutely no authority for the vice president to do anything other than open the envelopes containing the Electoral College votes, count them, and certify them. That's it. And those are the only things that Mike Pence is going to do. You want him to throw out Electoral College votes and accept Electoral College votes from slates of fake electors? Are you insane? So that conversation did not go very well. And it was at that point that Little Kenny Cheesebro was like, oh, man. Shit. That's a bummer. And so then he and John Eastman and Boris Epshteyn start focusing on Congress and the Supreme Court. Donald Trump, however, did not stop focusing on Mike Pence, because Mike Pence is one guy. And Mike Pence, as he had proven over the previous 4 years, was a lapdog for Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's like, oh, I can get that guy to do anything I want him to do. It's like, look at what he's done during my administration over the last 4 years. I can make that guy do anything. So Donald Trump remained focused on Mike Pence up to and including during the actual insurrection in Congress, when Donald Trump sent out that text or the tweet while the insurrection was underway, saying Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what needed to be done. And then the crowd started chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence." Donald Trump never took his focus off Mike Pence, because Mike Pence is one guy. And Donald Trump thought that Mike Pence was weak. Yeah. So anyway, the website where you can find all of these articles is talkingpointsmemo.com. It is one of my absolute favorite go-to daily websites, and has been for 20 years for political news. Josh Marshall and his team, including this reporter, Josh Kovensky, they're just beyond top notch. They are beyond top notch. I highly recommend. I've paid for a subscription to this website for at least 15 years. I love this website. I've learned so much about American politics, left and right, from talkingpointsmemo.com. I'm incredibly grateful for the work that they do. I highly recommend that people go visit that website and that they subscribe to that website. I think it's like $5 a month, man. It's worth every goddamn penny. It just is. Top-notch reporting from Josh Kovensky on this. It lays out a version, because like I said, it's like we had Rudy Giuliani, Sidney the Kraken Powell, Fox News, Jenna Ellis, Dominion voting machines, Smartmatic voting machines, Ruby Freeman, Shane Moss, Italian satellites, the batshit crazy conspiracy theory stuff. Then we had Donald Trump talking to the inbred, mouth-breathing Gomer MAGA Chud army over here that ended up storming the Capitol. Because why? You guys know this. I mean, come on. You know this. You know this. Say it with me. Because these people are dumb, gullible, loud, mean, easily manipulated, and easily separated from their money. They just bought 1,000 pairs of gold shiny sneakers. Each pair comes with an exclusive Donald Trump superhero charm. That's these people. But then you've got Little Kenny Cheesebro and John Eastman over here. The lawyers who were being serious about this. And this is the shit that they came up with. They wanted January 6th to last for 2 weeks. They wanted Mike Pence to refuse to count electoral votes. They wanted Congress to debate endlessly for 2 weeks until January 20th, when they would name Mike Pence as a temporary president, and then throw the entire thing to the Supreme Court, where they thought they had enough justices on their side who would simply appoint Donald Trump as president. It's fucking terrifying what these guys came up with, because they thought it was an interesting intellectual exercise. Yeah. So anyway, that is another, completely uplifting episode of Hawk After Dark because, you know, it's after dark. As always, a massive shout out and thank you and I love you to my brother Falcon, without whom none of this would be possible. And to our buddy Wiseacre for his incredible graphics, and to my absolute brother from another mother, my buddy Anu. He's one of my best friends on this planet. Thank you to him for letting us use his music for our intros and our outros. You can find Hawk merch at hawkmerchstore.com. And I don't need to say hawkpodcast.com, because if you guys are watching Hawk After Dark, that means that you're already top tier and you guys are basically family. And I love every single one of you. Okay. I hope everybody has an amazing week and I will see you soon. Thank you.